So January 23rd, I walk down the aisle. I say yes to Jesus. I believe in him. I rest in him. I say, Lord, have your way in my life. The thing about walking down that aisle, though, is when you get to the end of it, you're literally standing in front of the whole church. All eyes are on me, and I'm sitting in front of the whole church. You want to know an awkward place to be? In front of a church. You're in front. That means you're prioritized. You're up there. Like you are up there, and it's a church which is holy, righteous, godly, all of those things, and you're in front of righteousness and holiness and godliness. It is the most awkward place to be. That's exactly where God wanted me. It seems unnatural because it is. See, the thing about the gospel and that you got to begin to wrestle with right now, immediately, is that God's grace puts you in places where you have no business naturally being. Because all that he is by nature, we are by grace. And I'm saying we because we're up here, because we are a holy people. We are a royal priesthood. And yes, he has invited us by way of the gospel in the places that we have no business being, and that place is his righteousness. If you're uncomfortable with how that feels and how that sounds, you should be. I'm uncomfortable too. But that's what he's come to do. In Luke chapter 4, it's one of those passages that I just absolutely love. Jesus walks into the temple and he declares these words: "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind." He says to you and I, you were made for this, and I have come to make sure you experience it. I've come to set the captives free. You'll notice I'm saying we, because the Bible says that we are a holy people, a royal priesthood. And if you don't think you're supposed to be up here in this seat of righteousness, you're crazy. You were made for this. You were born to be all that he is by nature. We are now by grace. The problem is I see these great promises of God, but when I'm looking out, all I see is the guilt of what I've done and the shame of what I've done. Because guilt and shame, what they'll do is guilt will whisper and show you what you did and say, look, you did that. How are you going to be the righteousness of God and you did that? And then shame will come and say, not only did you do it, but shame will come in and say, it's actually who you are. And see, when you begin to see what you did as who you are, it makes you question whether you can even ever change. Can God change it if that's who I am? Guilt and shame will hold you hostage from the grace that God is daily trying to invite you to. And immediately, as I'm seated in this place of righteousness before God, all I can see from these seats are guilt, shame, regret. God, did you really know who I was when you extended me the gospel? Is it really good news for me, or is it just good news for everybody else? Because you know that's what shame does. See, guilt will come in, and guilt is about what you did. Shame will then come and whisper in your ear and say, no, it ain't what you did, that's who you are. And if it's who you are, then you'll think, I cannot change because it's who I am. But the gospel has come to change it all. It's come to deal with the guilt. And you know how it deals with guilt? Justification, just as if it has never happened. That's what guilt does. But then the gospel comes with shame, and literally, like a mother snatching off of sheets from a hiding child, it lifts up shame and says, you gotta go. Jesus comes to literally set the captives free. And when you're held captive by guilt, by shame, when you're held prisoner, he literally comes, and the gospel is literally pulling back sheets, pulling back shame, lifting guilt. He's come to set you free. And the message is simply, Albert, on January 24th, if you're gonna get free, get all the way free. Don't just come this far, and stop now. No, the gospel has come to move. And yes, he's in your life, but he's planning to move in your life. He's getting areas where you're still blind. He's getting areas where you're still held captive. He's getting areas where you still don't even know. There are areas in your heart and life, Albert, that you don't even know that are in bondage. You think you're okay, but the gospel is seeping down and going into the roots and saying, no, there's some stuff in here that I've got to clean. That's called sanctification. So you got justification, and now you got sanctification. But here's the thing, sanctification is what he does. He does it through you. He does it in you. He does the freeing. You do the resting. So after the January 23rd moment, there's this moment of just fear because January 24th is here and some of my old proclivities are back. And God is saying, no, that's what the gospel does. It goes down in areas that you didn't even know were bound. It opens up blinded eyes every day of the week. It brings forth freedom from captivity every day of the week. You think that was just something that happened on the altar of a church? No, this gospel is in your roots. It's in your bones, and it's lifting and pulling back guilt and shame and opening your eyes sometimes to areas in your life that you thought were okay. But then the gospel gets to moving down and says, no, that's not okay. I got to forgive here. I've been bitter here. I've been holding back here. The gospel is always purifying, edifying. Here it is, sanctifying. He's renewing you from your mind to your hands, even to your feet. Here's the thing about the gospel that frustrates you almost. God is saying, yeah, you're insecure. Yeah, you got saved. You're trying to get it together. Walk it out. Keep walking. Keep living. It's like, God, walk where? He says, no. There's a purpose. There's a calling on your life. The world is filled with darkness, but the light of God is calling you. I need you to walk. Jesus, I don't got it all figured out yet. Yeah, that's all right. We're going to walk this thing out as you live it out, and the glory of God will be manifested through your obedience. Walk. Because who the Son set free is free indeed, even if you don't feel it yet. He says, go, my son, into the world and walk in the freedom of Christ. And as you see the righteousness of God, and as you're intimidated, you remember, he says to you and I, all that I am by nature, you are by grace. So as we think about this idea of freedom, question that we got to ask ourselves is, what does it look like in our everyday lives? Come on now. You've got a freedom story. We all do. At my old church, we used to call it testimony service, where we'd sit around and talk about areas in our life where there used to be chains, but now there's freedom. There used to be shame, but now there's joy. Let's take some time and tell some of those no more chains stories. You never know, you might be encouraging someone, because the other thing I want us to talk about in our time together is where there are areas in our life, let's just be honest, well, there's still chains. Areas in our life where we're still bound. You were made for freedom. You were made for fellowship, and that freedom ain't gonna come without the fellowship of community. You can't stay in isolation and expect to get free. So while we have this community, this fellowship, let's have an honest conversation about areas where we need to be made free. Because not only were you made to be free, you were made for fellowship. Let's talk.